and welcome to Steve's Place. Glad to see you all here again for another Sunday of an intellectual journey. Tonight we're going to be journeying into the study of alchemy, the precursor to chemistry. So, but before that, we have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of. I'd like to remind everyone, if you click on the QR code, it'll bring up our testdetect.info, and you'll see this banner here. Now, if you click on that banner here, that will take you to the 2024 videos from this year. And we have like over 30 hours of that. And you click on that, and it'll take you to this page here. And on this page here, you can take and buy it now. You can leave a donation if you're feeling in a charitable mood. We certainly could use it. Seems like everybody got sick in the last week. And we also have T-shirts available on that, and the T-shirts are a great thing to have. In fact, the one I'm wearing is from 1994. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time. Anyway, I also want you to remember we have a YouTube channel that's separate from the 2024 videos. And on the YouTube channel, you get there, you simply go to our homepage, testdetect.info, and you'll find this big yellow box on the right-hand side, upper right-hand side, and you see that we have a Test Detect channel. That's generic. You click on that, and it'll bring up the videos of that from the channel directory. If you use the conference directory, what that does, it brings up a page where you can select the conference that you want to see, and you click on the YouTube logo by the conference, it'll have 20 or so videos that were at that conference. And if you know who you want to see, you can also use the speaker directory, which is a work in progress, and I'll be working on that soon again too, as soon as I get more time. And I want to remind everyone, be sure to give us that thumbs up. If you're watching on YouTube, that thumbs up is what helps drive traffic to our YouTube channel. And that our goal is to have 20,000 subscribers. We're just a few hundred short of that now, and I'd like to get to 1,000 members, but that's the way to go. On the YouTube channel, we do have a subscription, which is free. We have hundreds of videos you can watch as a subscriber. But most important, we have a membership at $9.99 a month, and that helps keeps us going. We have hundreds of more videos I got to be putting up here. That I'll probably have to go out and hire someone to do the conversion. But anyway, that's what that all goes to. It goes to keeping the channel going, and also help us with our conference. Our conference this year is going to be August 6th to 10th. And Albuquerque, we still haven't locked in on a final location yet. I'll be getting with some people this week and next week. Probably next week. I think everybody's going to be back because everyone just took time off for Thanksgiving, so it's hard to get things done. Okay. So, in the meantime,
hello.
Hold on just a second. I gotta remove some of the stuff. There we go. Okay. I'd like to introduce you to Bernard, the Crypto Alchemist. Bernard's been doing this for how many years?
About, I'd say a solid 10 now that I've been actually doing electrolysis experiments. I've been researching into alternative energies, like the free energy or 0 point energy and stuff, and monoatomics for probably 2 decades at least now. But yeah, actually started experimenting 10 years ago with basic electrolysis after getting into the Keshe Foundation, the KFSSI, what he called GANs, and myself replicating these GANs, which is an acronym: gas, atom, nano, solid, state. So a single atom like a gas atom, but nano solid state, thus this white powder. It's the exact same stuff as David Hudson's ORMEs, the orbitally rearranged electron molecule or monoatomic molecule, however the acronym is, but it's this monoatomic elements, and that it's very easy to make through electrolysis, and that it's basic electrolysis that when you connect two metals, an anode and a cathode, just with two wires, you do get a very small differential between it. And with that, I figured out that, hey, these ancient alchemists, maybe they knew what electricity was and this process. And that's what then drove my dive into looking into and starting to understand ancient alchemical practices, writings, symbols, and the technology of it. And that, in fact, yes, they fully did know what electricity was, and that it really does take a large amount of the esoteric aspect, the woo-woo, out of alchemy, and then actually gives proper meaning to it. So when the ancient alchemists were saying, oh, the metal is alive now, no, they're not talking about it being like this conscious physical entity. No, they were talking about it being a live current, so that it's now a live electricity once they connected it, set it up, so that when you read these things, if they're saying the metal's live, well, then the connection is made and there's a differential and a current going through it. Where when they say it's dead, that means you've disconnected it and the reaction is no longer happening. Thus, it is dead. So you have this live dead situation. Then also when they're saying, oh, the metal's impregnated. Okay, they're not talking about anything sexual. They're talking about adding this extra entity, metal or salt or whatever element or mineral, whatever the solution is calling for, you're impregnating that solution, that reaction, you're adding an extra piece into it, right? So you have to take an actual scientific method and approach and lens to these ancient alchemical writings, and also understand that there's a lot of secret coding in it, because this was suppressed science, and that the majority of the real ancient alchemical texts usually start off with, if you're not properly initiated, if you find this manuscript, you must take it to your local king or queen, to the authorities. You do not have the right to have it. This is punishable by death. So that regardless, this was like the top secret science of ancient times, and that it was very intentionally misled to make it look like these weird practices, or that it was just wild stuff of the imagination, when in fact it's very advanced science. And that when I started reading through all of these ancient texts from France, from Germany, from Europe and whatnot, from the few hundred years ago, that there's always this talk of both the philosopher's stone, but this white palatable gold that the ancients used to use, and that was this like high technology, this monoatomic gold. And that they talk about different ways of potentially making it, but then they also talk about all of these other effects that are indeed poison, and that the majority of times you'll just end up creating these toxic poisons and not this edible magic white powdered gold. But that was only one aspect of it. Where it really gets fascinating was Sir Isaac Newton's alchemy writings and his 7 colored states of transmutational metals. And that the moment that I first read that, and reading the white, the blue, the green, the black, the red, the yellow, and the pink states of these transmutational metals, I instantly recognized that I was repeating that same process in my electrolysis experiments that I had done originally, trying to repeat Keshe's GANs and making these monoatomic stuff. And that the first thing I've got to put out is that my own belief, I've yet to have any of my materials actually tested and confirmed, but I'm 99% sure that what Keshe will call this CO2 GANs, or monoatomic ormus, the white powdered stuff that he makes out of copper, he says it's CO2, but I do disagree. I believe it is the pure monoatomic metal element of whatever metal element you use as your anode in the reaction. And that when done properly, the first state that always comes off a metal anode is this pure white fluffy material, the pure monoatomic state of metal elements that Isaac Newton talks about and the ancient alchemists talk about. And that I have reproduced and made this white, fluffy, monoatomic material out of reactions of gold on gold. So both the 24 karat gold anode, 24 karat gold cathode. I've made it out of pure silver maples, so 99.999% 1 ounce maple coins, both on the anode and cathode. I've made it out of the pure copper with pure copper anode, pure copper cathode. I've made it out of pure iron, and that I get the iron into this pure white state, not the rusted state, but actually pure white fluffiness. I've done it with aluminum. I've done it with zinc. I've done it with bismuth and a couple other metals as well, tungsten and what else? A couple more. But the fact being, it is easily replicatable, and it is reproduced with every single metal that you use, right? So that no matter what metal on the anode side, it will turn into the pure white fluffy state first. But then after a moment, it starts turning into the blue, which is oxidized. And then this is extremely toxic. This will poison. This will start instantly, and these are, so this is a diatomic. Thus, 2 atoms, the metal plus the oxygen, thus the oxide. But you will die if you ingest it. If you even, you'll start getting heavy metal poisoning accumulation because just by touching it, because it is nanomaterial, that you have to wear gloves. You have to have safety precautions because it will instantly absorb through your skin and start giving you poisoning. And then it also turns into the pure red state, which I believe is a hydride or a hydroxide after the blue state. So that there's these different states that come from the reactions, and it's the exact same repeatable 7 colored states that Sir Isaac Newton talks about in his 7 color states of metals transmutation. And that the final state is a pink metal state, or a crystal state, he says, and that I'm got some pictures of metals that I've got suspended in this pink crystalline state that he says you're then able to transmutate one metal element into another. And I believe that through the right harmonics and the electrolysis process, where you're creating atomic hydrogen off of the cathode, that when you put the right harmonic into the metal, so for instance, if you want to create gold, you would get tungsten, which is, you know, one atomic mass below gold, into this pink crystalline state. You then have in your electrolysis the atomic hydrogen being produced alongside this pink crystalline tungsten. And then when you put the harmonic frequency of gold into that reaction, it should then be able to atomically, combine the atomic hydrogen with the tungsten and theoretically produce the next metal up, being gold. And that these are experiments I need to do with better equipment, but that there seems to be a lot of promising supporting developments within the LENR, low energy nuclear reaction, or low energy nuclear lattice reactions, or lattice energy, whatever the acronym is. Anyways, the cold fusion, the different names they give of it, but that it seems to be through this electrolysis method, and that the ancient alchemists might have actually understood a lot more than what we were told. Steve, do you mind bringing up the picture of the symbols first? Yes. So this right here, and when the three principles of alchemy, it makes a lot more sense when understanding the salt, which is the metal, right? So, and this line through it. So in my jars, when I do electrolysis, there'll be like the jar of water, your salt water, which is an electrode. So you have your salt, and then you put in the two metals, and always there will be an exclusion zone, this line that forms between the top and the bottom of the reaction as it goes on, and it looks almost identical to this salt that we have here. And that the sulfur going up, that's your cathode producing your hydrogen up, so that's the negative reaction. And so your sulfur going up, that is your cathode, the negative. And then your mercury, well, that's your anode, and that's going down, so that deposits the metals that corrode and then turn into the monoatomics, and then the oxides and the hydrides and whatnot going down into the reaction. So it makes sense to me that this right here is actually electrolysis. And then you have the four elements, which when understood from today's science, we have two going up and two going down. And well, you have Earth, and it's going down, and it has a line through it. Thus, it's the farthest, the heaviest. And what is Earth? It's a solid. So what are they talking about? They're talking about the four physical states of elements, and that your first one is the solid, and it goes down. Your second one, water. Well, what is water? It's a liquid. It's the second densest state of metals. It also goes down. Then you have the third one, which is air. What is air? Air is gas. That's the third state of elements. Oh, and then lastly, what else goes up? Well, fire. That's plasma. So right there, they have the four different states of elements. They're not talking about something esoteric. This is real science, real chemistry, and the 4 states of physical matter. And then plus elements. Oh, what's this 5th element? No, this is the 4 states of elements plus the periodic table of elements. So that's just basic chemistry, but also super advanced simultaneously, and that they're talking about the 4 states of the periodic table of elements. Now, when getting into planets and metals, it's something that I have over time found that it's in relation to the position of where the heavenly bodies are, the planets, the sun, the moon, and our own Earth, in relation to each other, and then the energetic forces that are exerted upon them between each other, depending on where they are, and that it actually seems to have an effect on these metals. Like when I was making monoatomic silver, the first time I left the reaction going for a full month, I began to notice and see that it was directly tied to the cycle of the moon. As the moon waxed and waned, there was very little, if not no, monoatomic silver being produced at all in the reaction. And then when it just happened to be a supermoon that month. And when the full supermoon happened, the container that the reaction was in that night, it completely filled up to the top with the monoatomic silver. And that since then, I've found that I will usually only make this colloidal or ionic silver, monatomic silver, during full moons, because you get the best results and it produces the most of it. And I took this thesis to the, testing it with real scientific method live on the Alien Scientist channel a couple years ago when there was a full lunar eclipse. And that when I started the reaction live at the beginning, well, it was producing a whole bunch of the monoatomic silver. And then as the eclipse began, it decreased and stopped producing. And at the height of the eclipse, it was producing no monoatomic silver at all. And then as the eclipse then finished, it started producing a whole bunch again, thus literally being tied and showing that a full moon, you're getting a bunch, an empty moon, you're getting none. And whatever you want to think of that, well, that's why the ancients tied silver to the moon. And then when I thought of that, I was like, okay, well, my monoatomic gold, well, it's expensive to make when you're doing the real thing because you're using real gold. And very easily, well, it will oxidize and turn blue if you're not paying attention. And well, you've lost all your gold and it's now poison, right? So I've only ran the experiment a few times. And the first couple times that I did it, I'd always notice that at some point the white monatomic gold would start turning into this black crap. And if you want to bring up the other picture that I have there, Steve, please, showing exactly this. So yeah, if you can enlarge it and shrink my face. There we go. So in this picture, you can see both nano gold right here, as well as monoatomic gold at the white monatomic at the top, the gold colored nano gold at the bottom, but then all this black stuff. And that is also some sort of form of the gold. And that I eventually found and realized, and then started testing, that during the day it would make the pure white monoatomic gold. And as soon as the sun sets, it goes to this black stuff and it makes the black nano whatever particulate of gold that it is, and not the nice pure white monoatomic gold. that the ancients say supposedly is the manna or palpable gold. Right here, I want to show or just highlight that there is an exclusion zone at the very top, a couple millimeters deep or thick, that has absolutely no material at all in it, and that there's also this a little bit of exclusion zone here with none of the nano or monatomic gold in it, and that clearly you have the gold still in metal gold nano particulate gold colored gold that happens in the water once your anode metal fully dissolves, so it's fully saturated the water, just like you can fully saturate salt, and then when salt is super saturated, it starts depositing out. This is the same that happens with whatever metal you're using, whether it's silver, whether it's gold, or anything else, and that it will first start particulating out as white monoatomic, and then it will then also make layers of actual metal nano particulate as well. And this is where you can get those sheets of metal on the nano layering for the metamaterial aspects of it. And what is referred to colloidal silver or a colloidal metal is the nanoparticulates, I guess, is what they say. But then it's also dissolved in, right? So the parts per million is a big thing. And what the parts per million actually are is not colloidal silver or colloidal gold. It is actually called ionic silver or ionic gold, and its outer covalent bond is one attached to the water itself, and that from the actual scientific medical studies, that is the super product because it's easily dissolved or taken in by bodies, but also or cells, but also in chemical reactions and anything of the sort. And that when you're making this solution and doing the electrolysis, that your average colloidal silver product that's sold is like 15 or 35 parts per million or something like that. But yes, it does look like some deuterium oil. That is another aspect of the reactions. Is I'm also pretty sure I make deuterium, and yeah, that's a whole other episode all on its own. Anyways, back to the point of when you get the actual physical nano gold or metal being deposited, you're fully diluted, you're fully saturated to the point of being super saturated. So your ionic silver or your ionic gold in that solution is then 1,000,000 parts per million that you've actually got the real ionic dissolved metal within. And that's exactly what you want. As opposed to a lot of times, the colloidals that you get will be blue and that it's oxidized poison. And that's where you see these people turn into Smurfs and die right away from heavy metal poisoning because they're literally consuming this oxidized diatomic poison and poisoning themselves and killing themselves. So like this stuff is very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing or just touch it because it's nanomaterial. It absorbs through the skin, through cells, and can be very toxic stuff. But when used right, even the blue oxidized metal colloidal waters, you never use it on yourself, but as a disinfectant, it's one of the absolute strongest. Like it is oxidized or copper oxide, silver oxide, all well known for being antiviral, antibacterial, pesticides, and all herbicides, stuff like that. And that is the reason why. And all right, let's see what other pictures we got to go off of and show. So here we go. Here I'm showing this one is both, this is a silver cathode and a gold anode, and making the pure white monoatomic or ormus stuff and material, and that this is what you want to harvest first. This is what will happen in the reaction for the first hour or so, and that until the water becomes fully saturated or supersaturated, you'll see clouds of this form off of both the anode and cathode and just turn into this pure white, cloudy, nice ormus GANs monoatomic metamaterial that you want to harvest. And that, oops, there we go. And then here you see now, as the reaction continued on, that eventually it got supersaturated and started depositing the nano gold material back into the water into a heavier, denser state. And that this then potentially also could be toxic. Either way, it's not the ormus monoatomic state you want. It is still in that solid metallic state. That said, it is the electroplating, it is these lattice layering, the nano lattices that you're making, and that is a potential metamaterial that it does eventually deposit along the glass and turns into these sheets of the metal. So here I've now poured out what was in here into another jar, letting it settle to harvest, and then starting the reaction again to continue on. And you can see always there's a big portion of it that floats at the very top, and that is supposedly the best stuff. All right, more pictures. Here we go, a little video, if you don't mind bringing up. Steve. There we go, thank you. Monoatomic zinc, and so I pause it here to show that this is the zinc as a zinc anode I'm using, and you can see that it's the monoatomic material off the zinc has actually formed a structure, and that halfway down the jar it's created a layer, and it builds out, and it builds in tubes, and it self-arranges into this crazy structure, and that it's defying like gravity or buoyancy essentially, because it should be going all the way to the bottom and resting at the bottom, but instead it actually creates structures and tubes and different forms. Structures that seem like clouds or almost waterfalls, but suspended. So here you can see that it's going all the way around, and it actually ends up forming and building a full solid layer of material, and then the bottom half of the jar still remains as water. And then over in the second jar,
tube structures and clouds of these plasmids of monoatomic zinc in this reaction. And then we have the diatomic silver that is formed off of that reaction, and more zinc there.
and here I'm showing another suspended area of both diatomic and monoatomic copper here. But as I move the camera around, you'll see that it's just suspended an inch or two above the actual bottom water of the jar and just held in place, and that it self-arranges into these different exclusion zones.
And here we still have the suspended copper.
So right there you can see a couple inches up, and I suspect it's on this reaction that these triple coils that I have there's no actual current going into them, but that their electromagnetic field might have something to do with the level that these are at. And I've got more experiments that show different exclusion zones depending on where I have different solenoids that they will suspend in layers and self-arrange and organize around depending on them. So there is a lot more
exclusion zone,
a lot more electromagnetic force in this buoyancy / gravity equation and demonstrated in electrolysis.
zone within the electrolysis reactions.
All right, so that was that one, and then we have, let's show, here we go, this one. So in this jar that's been fully sealed, I believe at this point that this picture was taken, probably about 2 years that it was fully sealed, but you can see this pink state of the copper, that it's fully suspended, pink reddish state, and I'd say this is pink, and that also there's a silver coin there that is also in the full pink state as well, and that I've been able to get all metals into this pink state Sir Isaac Newton talks about, and that when it is in this state, they actually show, or they actually are like reflect and sparkle, like they actually have crystals in them, on them, and it's a legitimate crystallized form of metal. And that before they get into this pink state, the crystal state, they're actually a bright red state, and it looks as if like it's glowing hot, but in fact it's not. Like they're in water, they're cold, but they remain in this red state. And is that same red state that metamaterial state, that superconductive state potentially? And I suspect so, and that there needs to be a lot more tests done on these materials. This also silver bar that had been eroding down. Okay, this one right here. So the circle within the square, within the triangle, within the circle, and it's also squaring the circle. It all has to do with the formation of the different elements through crystallization, and that it's part of electrolysis, it's part of chemistry, and it's part of the geologic formation and mineralization, and it ties in especially with Walter Russell's periodic tables of harmonic frequencies, or the octave scale, and that is a whole other presentation for another day. And here we have a bunch of the different coils that I made, nano coating them, and then using as experiments. So in this picture here, I've got a double copper or triple copper solenoid 2 coils as the cathode, and they produce a whole bunch of hydrogen off of them. And then I have a straight down anode of a triple solenoid coil going down, and it's completely covered in bubbles that are stuck to it. And what comes off the anode? Oxygen. So oxygen is magnetic, and when you make a triple solenoid coil and put electricity through it, you are creating electromagnet, and thus this anode is a built-in electromagnet that also captures and keeps the oxygen on it. So for developing hydrogen cars and hydrogen fuel, pretty useful way of keeping the oxygen. And that I've got a few different examples of repeating this process. Let's close that one and then share this one. Here we go again. Another triple solenoid copper coil as the anode, completely covered in the oxygen bubbles because they're magnetic, and you've created an electromagnetic field with the solenoid, triple solenoid around it. But what is very interesting is inside the bubbles, it's all blue oxidized copper, and that it legitimately is like a liquefied goo. And that if you take it out of the water, it just drips and falls apart and corrodes instantly as it oxidizes. And that it's the first state of breaking down through Sir Isaac Newton's 7 color states of transmutational metals. And that I believe that this has to do with when you're putting your frequency into the harmonic frequency to try to transmutate one metal into another, that you want to start when you first have it in this blue goo state. And that as you proceed through the transmutation process from going to the blue to the red, or to the white to the black to the yellow, then red, then pink, and ending in the pink crystalline state, that you want to be putting your harmonic frequency of the metal you want to transmutate into this process throughout, so that the atomic hydrogen is then bonding and going into this blue goo while it's still a goo jelly form before you re-solidify the metal into a solid again. And that it's actually very easy to, through the right process, I should say. Like, it's extremely difficult if you don't know what you're doing, but once you do know what you're doing, through the processes to recover a full copper non-oxidized metal solid state from the blue goo state, and reversing the process of the electrolysis breakdown of the metal if you know the right processes, which is, I guess, what do I call it? Would you call it? Anyways, processes I've discovered that I'm working on, like trying to patent and publish and acknowledge and whatnot. So one more point here of this blue goo triple copper solenoid covered in oxygen bubbles. It ends right here, and then you can actually see copper oxide dripping down and oozing out of the actual metal itself, and that it will fully ooze out and corrode if you just leave it hooked up and let the process continue for 3 days. Your entire anode will be corroded, gone away, and turned into oxidized diatomic goo. And that when you take it out in that blue state, that it is very, very weak, fragile, and just by touching it, it can break down and turn into nothing compared to solid metals. Just some different coils I made. These pictures several years old. Here we got like the yellowy state of a reaction, and once again you can see that it forms these different exclusion zones and collective zones, and that what should, you know, gravitationally, buoyancy wise, completely fall and like descend to the bottom of the canister, jar, or whatever container, that it does not, and that it self-organizes into different forms. So in this reaction, you can see a whole bunch of atomic hydrogen coming off of this triple solenoid cathode copper coil here, and then the triple copper solenoid coil on this side, the anode, it actually forms into blue, green, and black nanotubes. And this is on the inside, and that these structures, like, it's not oozing, these are solid structures that remain, these nanotubes. And even after you take the electricity out, you can seal the jar, and these structures remain and oftentimes will continue to grow. And are these the, you know, a way to make the nanotube material, like carbon nanotube, stuff like that, different element nanotubes at a very cheap, easy process, potentially. Here I've got a tungsten ring, as well as copper around the tungsten ring as the cathode, and I believe it's a silver anode coin that's out of the picture, but that you can see the atomic hydrogen at the top, an exclusion zone, and then the monoatomic and potentially diatomic silver and tungsten collecting at the bottom here. And that, again, you've got these two different zones, and when going back to the original 3 principles of alchemy and that salt, that, like, there's always that line through the middle of the salt, and that salt represents the salt water of the reaction, from my experiences. All right, what else do we have to show? Okay, in this reaction here, and this is just a simple jar of salt water, and then I have a copper coil that's insulated, so the two pieces of copper not insulated that are exposed are both up above the water. and then the insulated copper wire goes down to the bottom of the jar, around the bottom, back up, and then lifting up out to hold the other piece of metal. So what that has done is created an insulated differential between the two metals in the jar, and that between the two here, you can, with their electric differential connected between them, you have the gold chain right here, and you have the silver right here. Oh, and then also a key part, sorry, so there's two aspects. So there's two connections. You also always have to have two connections. So here you can see also, I've got a second copper connection to the coin, to the gold above water. So there's one going insulated under the water, and then another one uninsulated, but connecting the two above the water. So there's two different connections to the two metals, creating a flow of electrical differential between the two. And then from that, when you have the two in the water, you can see that there's this monoatomic cloud of gold and silver going back to each other, connecting, and that you have this flow of monoatomics being made even without an actual electrical input. And this right here is what ancient alchemists are talking about, saying, oh, it's alive. The metal is live, right? And that, boom, that makes sense. And yes, they did develop the technology and understand what these things were, what current was, what electricity was. And here we have more nanotubes being formed from a copper and from a zinc. Here we have an exclusion zones and then suspension zones of diatomic copper or copper oxide here. But that this jar is completely sealed. It had been sealed for, I believe, a couple weeks at this point, and still right in the middle you have a bunch of suspended pieces, right? So it's defying buoyancy and gravity and self-organizing. Here I have what was a triple solenoid copper coil. See, don't ever do this. I am lucky to be alive. I probably poisoned myself substantially here with having that oxidized and hydride copper material on me. So don't do what BurnEye did there. But interesting part is that half of the coil was blue oxidized and the other half was red hydride, and it just, the blue red, it's always half and half. There's a blue oxide and a red hydride, I guess, like, and it just how it relates to, you know, the blue red of magnets and stuff, very interesting. But that's a whole other full episode all on its own of showing it in the different reactions. What I have up right now is the yellow sulfur state. And the alchemists would say when a metal dies, it turns to this yellow sulfur state. And what did they mean by that? People are like, oh, that's just some esoteric mumbo jumbo. No. And I don't know if it's actual sulfur. I suspect not, because it doesn't smell like sulfur, but I don't actually know what it is. But I've been able to create this several times, and that when your anode fully corrodes out and the reaction dies because it's losing, the positive feed in, your anode in, and only getting the negative feed or electrical energy in, suddenly everything turns yellow within the reaction, and it turns into this yellow state. and that is what they call the yellow transmutational state of alchemy. And in this jar, I was able to seal it in, because it's very hard to keep the sulfur state, because usually within a few days to a month, it will actually revert back into the blue oxidized material. But in this one here, I was able to actually capture the yellow. All right, here we're showing the self-organization of the swirls that always happen within these reactions, and that you will get what look like mini galaxies of self-organizing, self-spinning, and yeah, just it's wild, of this monoatomic or ormus or plasmid materials, and that there's always the rotation within it. There's always exclusion zones, and it self-organizes. Here we've got another one. And yes, there's coils in this, but here in this tub, you can see again this self-organization, and I had just added water into it. It stirs up, and then it goes into the spiral as it self-organizes, centers, and then settles. And it does this every time, no matter what, when it's in these materials, right? So you can see, just every time I'd add water, it would do the spirals and self-organize. Okay, that's that one. Oops. What else do we have? Okay, this picture, we've got several of the different colored states of the materials, from the white to the reddish, brownish red there. You got the blue, and then we've got a couple purple ones. And the purple ones are fascinating. After I left monoatomic gold out in the sun and monoatomic silver out in the moon, they both turned purple and into a purple ormus, and the water started tasting sweet. But what these were is, I've been doing a series that I've called Agricultural Alchemy, where I use the water, so the ionic silver, the ionic gold, the ionic copper, and zinc, also I guess some colloidal water as well, to try with plants, right? Because you don't want to poison yourself. You don't want to give yourself heavy metal poisoning. You want to try it out on plants to see the effects. And over the past couple years, I have found that the waters of the monoatomic, as well as of the purple, actually increases yields by 2 to 3 times the size on my garden, and that compared to regular water. And I've been documenting it. I've got some videos on it. I've got pictures of it. And the garden side that has regular water, it's normal size, and then the stuff that had the white water about 2 times, and the stuff that had the purple is about 3 times. But the stuff that had the blue and the red water, those plants died. So right there, more evidence that the oxidized and hydride waters actually kill you and are poisonous, and they are poisonous to plants as well. And that is why you always test things on plants first, not animals, and definitely not yourself. Let's see. Oops. here you can kind of see like the pinky red state on a bar of aluminum. Just some experiments I had going on outside with the electrolysis. And so these, why they're all in plastic containers outside, although there's a couple of jars of glass in this picture because it was the summer, but I'm out in Canada where it gets extremely cold and it gets very, very frozen. And despite the water being very full of salt, even the salt water fully freezes in the winter. And the point of this is that I leave these going all year round. And when the salt water is frozen to a block of ice in the middle of the winter, I will still plug in, a couple of these electrolysis things with just a little 5-volt AC charger, like a USB charger that I've split the ends off of. And in minus 30 degrees Celsius, I think it was minus 35 degrees Celsius, the coldest day that I had tried this last year, I think it was 2 years ago that I first discovered it. But when you plug it in, put that 5 volts into the frozen ice block, the anode and cathode instantly start melting that ice and bubbling and producing hydrogen, so that the water car with a water tank is still feasible with this technology, that it will still produce, still melt off of a frozen ice block. It doesn't have to be a liquid water to do hydrogen production for hydrogen fuel. And that is another major part of my electrolysis research and experimenting, and something that I haven't really put too much information out on because I don't want to be Stanley Myered. But I do want to develop the Stanley Myers technology and dream, and everybody deserves to build their own water powered car, and it seems to be a lot easier than they're letting on to. And I will definitely be doing more episodes on that. Just I'm developing it a bit privately first and don't want to be Stanley Myered. That said, I will open source all of my developments on it in the future. Yeah. All right. Oh, Steve? And yeah, it wraps up a solid hour, but we're waiting on Steve. Hopefully he's able to reconnect. Uh-oh. Well, maybe you'll have to reconnect and come back in. I'm not sure. Look at that. See, I mentioned hydrogen water cars, and now they've disconnected Steve. Oh dear. That's what happens every time. Can't mention it. They get mad. All right. Well, while we're waiting for Steve to hopefully reconnect, we can look at the fluffy monoatomic clouds. And yes, another major part of my electrolysis stuff, I'm pretty sure I've produced deuterium and tritium, and probably a lot of it in several different reactions and processes, but I don't really talk about it because, again, I don't want to be Stanley Myered. Or that one might be Hans and Fleischmann. I don't know. But it's a technology that needs to be developed for the good of the world. And anyone, we got Steve back.
Okay, we're back. I don't know what happened.
I mentioned hydrogen-fueled water cars.
So, are there any other questions, or?
Oh, I'm pretty good for that being a solid presentation. Yeah, anyone got questions? Use all caps in the live chat. Oh, did Steve freeze? I think Steve's frozen. Do any of these water samples become flammable? Well, all of the hydrogen gas that comes out of it, extremely flammable. I light it off often showing demonstrations, but also the red material that I make, it actually is flammable and it ignites on metals like this red stuff. When I rub it on any metal foil, it usually ignites. And yeah, that's another very interesting property of these different materials and the potential metamaterial aspects of them. And great question. One of them does become that. Steve's based out of Phoenix, I believe, or Arizona or New Mexico, somewhere in that area. Ooh. So I don't know if there's a storm down there. I don't know. Oh, but that did remind me and gives me time to show off my jelly aluminum, the transparent clear aluminum that I have now reproduced the process of making. And let's, I guess, I should probably follow my own advice and get some gloves. So unos momenter, please. All right. We got a cloth. Uh-oh. Oh no. Am I damaging it? Doing it for science. Oh no. There we go. We got it. Okay, so here you guys can see, if it will focus solely on it. There we go. We've got clear aluminum jelly. So this is the transparent clear jelly. Why can't I get a good focus on it? There we go. And that it is actually see-through clear aluminum material right there, and can make transparent metal jellies that are a solid as well, aka the fundamentals of aerogel. And that I have also produced the processes of making the metamaterial of aerogel. We got Steve back. All right, so I'm just showing here aluminum aerogel, or the clear and translucent, it's both, aluminum material that I'm able to make. It's like a crystallized gel. We got Steve back?
Yeah, kinda.
Very good.
But
Thank
we're
you,
having
Busy.
some difficulties, so we're going to probably call it a night for tonight.
Absolutely. That was a solid hour presentation, and thank you for having me, Steve, and appreciate everything.
For some reason, this thing went bonkers on my end here, and I don't know what happened. You know. So, anyway, I'd like to thank you for being here. Maybe we could do it again in a couple weeks.
Absolutely.
And I can't wait to. I hope you can make it down to the conference. I think everyone will be fascinated by your stuff.
It's my number one thing to do. Goal for AIM is to make it to Tesla Tech 2025, and I'm gonna start up a GoFundMe to try to get my arse down there.
Okay,
but we got enough time to make it happen.
So I'm just gonna go ahead and just close up because it seems like everything got knocked off of here.
Yeah, for sure. No worries. And thank you for having me, Steve. And look forward to talking to you again, and all the great work and amazing videos. For anyone on my channels that's not subscribed to Tesla Tech, make sure you go over and do so, because Steve Ellswick here, he is not just a heck of a legend, he probably has the best library of alternative science, breakthrough science, and fringe science and development and technology of like the last 40 years, whether it's 0-point energy, whether it's hydrogen, electrolysis, all sorts of different stuff. There's just videos of all of the legends. Like, you've had everyone present at Tesla Tech over the years.
And don't forget to hit the thumbs up, on the YouTube thing. And we'll see y'all hopefully next week. You all have a great day, a great evening.